kia puta ngā whakaaro I roto I te rangi Māori me te aroha nui ki o tātou hāpori puta noi te tai rāwhiti. Pēnei me nā ki tia hoki ngā whānau e noho pani ana, ngā pakeke e noho tūroro ana I runga I te ngoto tama I Kraiti Ame.
Thank you for that. Okay, apologies. I have an apology for Councillor Tupara. I don't know, check the dates that she sent through. She didn't let us know. Okay, I have an apology for Councillor Tupara and Councillor Ria. Do I have a mover for that? Moved by Councillor Robinson, seconded by Councillor Wharehinga. Thank you. Declarations of interest. Not okay, councillors. Before we start today, we've got a massive day ahead of us. I need you to be ready and smart when we go through our agenda items because we have heaps to move through. You know that we also have some guests coming online a little bit later. We have other organisations that are coming in to see us, so I'll have to stick to time. So what I'm asking is that if you talk about an item, stick to the agenda, please. We're here today to discuss what's on our agenda. Make sure you ask one question or you're ready, you get one speaking term. If it's really necessary, then I will decide if people get another speaking term or not. Thank you. Okay, let's start. Get ready, page 5, minutes. Moved by Councillor Wharehinga, seconded by Councillor Cranston. Any queries or questions that this is a true record of what was discussed at our hui on the 2nd of March? If not, all in favour? Contrary, carried. Thank you. We have one item on our check sheet. It is all completed. Thank you, Ms. Noble. Okay, what you will see in front of us for the next 3 items are reports of external organisations who we have some part of. It's not our organisation, but we are part of that. So I take you to page 11. Let me just first go through leave of absence, no. Acknowledgements and tributes, no one raised anything with me. Public input and deputations, not today. Any extraordinary business, no. Notice of motion or adjourned business, no. So I take you straight to page 11, which is the Local Government Funding Agency report. Pauline, the floor is yours. I take everything as read, and then we'll open the floor for questions and queries.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I'm just going to, because as the Worship said, the 3 next papers are exactly similar in content in terms of what are you doing in this process. Under the Local Government Act, a council controlled organisation or council controlled trading organisation has to provide to its members its statement of intent or its next 3 years for them to be considered, plus their interim set of accounts. So in all 3 cases, you will have that attached to each of those reports. And you have a chance to receive it. They have to provide that by the 1st of March. You can give feedback, and then they take that, and the adoption process is usually the 30th of June. The first paper that you have here in front of you, as stated, is the Local Government Funding Agency. It is who we borrow all our external debt from. It had mentioned in this report about that the statement of intent may need to change after the announcements of 3 water reforms. That does give parts of that, they will adjust anything with regards to now that instead of being 4 entities, it will now be 10. But apart from that, it is basically for your consideration, any of the feedback with regards to that, get back to those shareholders of the statement of intent that's included here. But happy to take any questions.
Okay, the floor is open if there are any questions of clarification. Councillor Cranston, thank you.
See the climate action loans having a bit of a margin, I just want to interest us
In terms of it's a growing market and what it is coming interested, we're not big enough yet to do that, but it may be something in the future that may have relevance to us on what we do as well. So it is growing, currently not, but it may be something that we in the future.
The short-term lending went up considerably in the 6-month period. I wonder if that's not, or is it on the 25 million 6-month period?
I would have to double check with regards to what was going on in terms of the programs. I would imagine it would have been increased, especially with after Gabrielle. Like us, we will have to take short-term 6 months while we're looking for funding. So I would imagine it hasn't decreased. I would imagine it has increased because of that circumstances. What created the 6 months up to the 31st of December, I can't actually say all the councils, but I would say it's not decreased. The short terms, and again, some of those things as the longer terms will come back into our treasury with PwC as what is our exposure, etc., and our subsequent quarterly reports. But there's usually up to at least 12 months to that's considered short term. Then it's slightly medium, but then you're going a little bit longer thereafter. Sometimes they consider it up to 18 months, but yes, definitely 6 to 12 months.
Any more questions or queries? Councillor Foster and then Councillor Robinson. Thank you.
Yeah, just one thing. With Auckland City Council pull out of local government New Zealand, does that affect the ability to use this facility at all? Or
Free Worship, no, it doesn't. These are two independent organisations. So
they're not connected.
No.
it's not affect there?
Local Government New Zealand is a membership body that advocate on our behalf. This is a total different entity.
So other people other than councils will use this facility as well?
I think it's exclusive to councils. Yeah. Councillor Robinson, thank you.
Thank you. I see the statement of intent is to cover the period 1st of July. So if we had any feedback on the statement of intent, it would have to be feedback pretty quickly. And noting this is a draft statement of intent. And what I noted was with this statement of intent and the statement of intent for the next paper, under the values and the purposes of this entity, which our council is part of and therefore is part of us, there is nothing about Te Tiriti, there's nothing about iwi partnerships, there's nothing about mana whenua relationships. There's some core values, acting with integrity, customer focus, striving for excellence. There's nothing about equity. And these are values that our council has expressly said we want to embody and adhere to. And I would like to see some of those values reflected in something such as this. I know this is a financial arrangement, but those are values which this council holds really strongly to, and they could have a place in here. They should have a place in here in my view, as with the next paper as well. So I'm not sure how we could feed that back. But
Your Worship, it is that 2 months to take the information that you have represented, and if the shareholders have comments, you give that feedback to them, and they will take that into consideration before the final adoption in June. So yes, we can take that feedback and give that to them.
Thank you for that, Pauline. So we'll leave that with you for all 3 papers. If there's not note, you know what, Councillor. Thank you for that. Do I have a mover or a seconder for this report or any other questions? Councillor Tibble, question or moving? Moving by Councillor Tibble, seconded by Councillor Gregory. Question, Councillor Parata.
Hi, Aroha mai. I do actually support the paper and support what Councillor Robertson is saying. I just had a question that probably is an operational question, but would just help me to get clearer in my mind. Is when we is it funded? When we get money from them, how does that happen? Do they have to believe in the kaupapa that we're asking money for? Do we have to create a proposal for that? Like, is there a negotiation? Couldn't tell from the paper itself how that interaction happens.
Pauline.
Sorry about my son at school holidays.
Your worship. No, this is like a bank. We go to the bank and we say, we want to get a loan. So if you need a loan for your house, you go to, you would go to this funding agency, hey, we need to borrow from you for the next 5 years of, say, 5 million. So basically, it is a straight transactional loan for getting our funds. It's all our external debt.
Okay, I have a mover and Councillor Tibble. I have a seconder and Councillor Gregory. If there are no more questions from the floor, all in favour, contrary, carried. Okay, let's move to our next of 3 papers. So this is the Regional Software Holdings Limited update cover, page 49. Thank you. So this is the regional sector. And Nadine, did you wanted to comment on our regional sector work?
Yes, so through your worship, this was one which we became shareholders in last year, I think it might have been. And so basically it kind of is the contracting house for any consultants that the regional sector, that is Te Uru Kahika, contract in. It also provides support for our special interest groups that sit across all the different environmental streams, as well as a particular focus on software, IT kind of infrastructure. And so in terms of your comment before, Councillor Robertson, definitely will apply here. I'm sure they will be receive that comments in terms of the value as well. So we will feed that back.
Councillor Robinson, thank you.
The other comment I particularly noted in on this current paper was climate. There was no reference to the climate issues. So those are obviously our 2 major problems.
Thank you, and that will be raised. Thank you for that.
Sorry, and I should just say for context, it kind of morphed from being purely around IT type infrastructure into what is quite bigger in terms of the whole regional sector network. So it has changed, and these values obviously don't reflect that now. So
Any more questions of Pauline or our CEO, Councillor Elder?
Thank you, Your Worship. The directors, where do they draw the directors from? Thank you.
through your worship, the directors are chief executives of the entities that are represented there, similarly to BOPLASS, which is the next one. I'm not a representative on the board, but I do have a vote on behalf of the council. So they nominate from a pool of chief executives that represent the council up to the board.
Any more questions or queries in this regard? Councillor Parata.
Kia ora, yeah, I wasn't sure. I know that the entity that we're talking about is primarily focused towards IT. What does that IRIS system, what is it supposed to do? What does it do? Why everyone uses it and then we need an upgrade of it?
So there's a number of things that they actually have within that program, but only one that we're actually participating in, and that's the environmental monitoring and reporting. The other ones is their soft other platform. And I can't tell you specifically what those are, as we found that we didn't have a need for it and we have our own. But so they're saying that they have more, they do more, but we actually don't have the full needs of all of these services of that particular item.
Councillor Thompson, thank you.
Yes, just from reading this, so you only pay levies on the programs you're interested in. That's correct.
That is correct.
Okay, if all question, thank you, Councillor Wharehinga. Councillor Robinson, I have a mover and Councillor Wharehinga, second and Councillor Robinson, all in favour, contrary, carried. Okay, the last of these reports. I'll tell you the page soon. Thank you. 111. So this is BOPLASS, which we have been part of for years and years. Okay, Pauline.
And so, yes, it is years and years, and most of the one that we, the assignment and the benefit of is for procurement and insurance, and that is a significant benefit that we received. It will be aligned with all of those other councils within that Bay of Plenty LAS region. And basically, it says what it's doing and what it's seen for the next few while, but fundamentally the savings that we've had from that alliance has been significant.
Councillor Robinson, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Page 123, about halfway down the bullet points, waste operator and licensing data system. BOPLASS is leading the project in conjunction with Waikato councils. A shared service is to be established, providing a common waste operator, licensing and management system across multiple councils. Reference again at page 130 to solid waste management. When I read that, and bearing in mind what we're going to be discussing tomorrow, I went, is there some information or learnings that we've already been paying for and a pathway that we're going down, which is possibly, I mean, and we can discuss about, I'm just flagging this. I don't want to discuss it in the space today because of tomorrow's paper, but I just read that we, okay.
You wish it. So just at a principal level, I think that this has been the difficulty for us being so historically part of BOPLASS since it kind of started up, is that the services that they work on in the collective tend to benefit more in the Bay of Plenty because of the tyranny of distance and isolation that we've got here. We've tended to look towards the south in terms of Napier Hawke's Bay. That being said, we're still carting out the other way too. So there is potentially an opportunity around learnings, but the service provision will be very difficult for us to achieve here. And Mr. Wilson's not here, but he can probably comment on the discussions that they may have had with other councils. But that particular, so those items like that, where there is a service delivery aspect, becomes quite difficult for us to tap into from our region. But that doesn't stop us also from joining up the other LASs. So you can be part of more than one LAS, so we could be with Bay of Plenty as well as Hawke's Bay and get the benefits that way.
Thank you, Madam.
Any other questions in regards to our BOPLASS statement of intent? If not, can I ask for a mover? Thank you, Councillor Gregory, seconded by Councillor Parata. All in favour? Contrary? Carried. Okay, we are just organising ourselves to make sure we get Darren Ponter online, because when there's Darren, much earlier, Darren, after our discussion on the aeroplane, you can see that we are a council that move fast. Initially, we thought it would be 10 o'clock to have Darren on, but not. Good morning and the warmest of welcome to the Gisborne District Council. Councillors, I take you to page 144. And I welcome Darren, who's going to talk to us and give us a presentation on this huge piece of work that is happening and that we are part of. So Darren, without further ado, the floor is yours, and then right at the end, we will open the floor up for councillors if they might have questions from you.
Kia ora, Mayor Stoltz, can you hear me?
I can hear you, thank you.
Cool. Morena, councillors, so thank you very much for having us this morning. What we've been asked to do today is really give you an introduction presentation. Lee Halstead, who is online with me, prior to a workshop that I understand that you're going to have in May on the subject of rating of whenua Māori land. So as a means of introduction, and I hope that the slides are coming up on the screen, I just want to take you through and give you a flavour of what this review is about. So the review is identified in your long-term plan. Your current long-term plan is something that needs to be required. It's in part been occasioned by a significant legislative changes to the way in which whenua Māori is rated, which came through the local government rating of whenua Māori Act 2021. So we're into our second year of living under that legislation. And I'll cover those subjects there that are on the screen. I think the first thing to note to you, because for some of you as councillors, this will be the first time that you're starting to go through a long-term plan or an annual planning process. And to some extent, some of the issues that we deal with in this paper are really at the heart of your connection to the community, because ultimately you're taking money off people and you have extreme powers in relation to how you do that. And so there's a significant seriousness, I suppose, to the whole issue of rating and income generation for the council. In relation to those powers, they come from the Local Government Act 2002 and the Local Government Rating Act 2002. And all the amendments that have occurred to that over the years. They provide you with the power to rate. They provide you with some flexibility in terms of how you do that. And I suppose they require you to have a degree of empathy and understanding in relation to how you impose rates on your community. You set those rates through the long-term plan. You can adjust them through your annual plan, but the legislation requires you to temper your rates policy. So it's really not good enough to have a one boot fits all type situation. You do need to think about how Tolaga Bay, for example, is potentially different from Gisborne City, how the needs of rural landowners might differ from urban landowners, and in this case, how the owners of whenua Māori land that's governed under Te Ture Whenua Māori Act 1993 might be different from those lands who are governed through a general land status. Gisborne District Council receives around about 35% of its income via rates. It's not the majority, but it's certainly significant. It amounts to about $62 million per annum. I've talked about why, whoops, sorry, let me go back. I've talked about why this is important from a whenua Māori perspective, but the map on there, which also appears on page 12 of the report, if you happen to have that in front of you, starts to give you a sense of the significance of Māori land within the Gisborne district. Many of you will intuitively know this, but it's 27% of the district is whenua Māori land. The land that's shown in that image in pink and blue, majority of that, the disproportionate majority of that clearly is north of Gisborne City. So that's 3,200 rating units or 228,000 hectares. In relation to the recent legislative reforms, which are informing informing large parts of this review, there are sort of 8 bigger issues. The first is that the Local Government Rating Act, or the Local Government Act 2002, now requires all rates policy to support the principles set out in Te Ture Whenua Māori Act. So those principles are about acknowledging the taonga tuku status of whenua Māori, but also the inalienability of that land and its spiritual connection to owners. So that will change the way in which councils approach this through the rating policies, but I'd have to say it probably is a little bit less of a change for Gisborne District, because you have led out in this area. You are, I suppose, leaders within a pack of councils who have similarly disproportionately large amounts of Māori land and have proactively grappled with rating of Māori land over the last 10 10 to 15 years, and significantly have informed the government in relation to the policies that it brought down in 2021. Quite a few of those were informed by policies that the Gisborne District Council already had in place and now apply across the board, across Aotearoa. A significant development in 2021 is that rates will not be levied on unused Māori freehold land, and councils will write off rates arrears in those instances. This really puts to bed a sort of merry-go-round that was occurring within the system, where councils like GDC rated whenua Māori land. The landowners didn't pay their rates for one reason or another, and ultimately, after a period, the council was then obliged to write them off. And in many instances, those rates related to land that weren't used, where the owners couldn't be identified, etc. This puts that all to bed and says, if the land is unused, it won't be rated. And it joins a number of other categories of land, like churches, like urupa, cemeteries, etc., that you'll find in Schedule 1 of the 2002 legislation. Ngā whenua rāhui Kawanata is definitely an area that the Gisborne District Council had led out in. Yourselves and a Pōtiki district have some of the largest areas of land that are managed under the Ngā whenua rāhui covenanting program, and I think certainly the Gisborne District Council had come to the view quite a number of years ago that those lands were akin to conservation estate. They were used effectively for benefiting a conservation purpose, and therefore, because conservation land is not rated, Ngā whenua rāhui covenanted land shouldn't be rated. Again, the 2021 legislation puts that issue to bed, so there's less of an impact on the Gisborne District Council because you were already doing this, but what it does is support the approach that you had already taken and now make this a national regime. Rates arrears, you must write those off on any Māori freehold land that's considered unrecoverable. That might be instances where you have tried several times to contact the landowners, you can't make any contact with them, and rates arrears have grown on that land. The Chief Executive now has the ability under the Act that she didn't have previously to write off those rates. Individual owners, on the request of councils, can rate individual houses on Māori land as separate rating areas, and really what that does is recognise the increasing interest in papakainga and social housing, that if land is used for housing in one part, it might be part of a whānau on a multiple owned block, and the rest of the owners still have the large interest in the rest of the block. Those owners are not necessarily paying the rates on the house portion of the property. So it's designed to encourage housing on Māori land, but also to be equitable to the overall owners. Multiple land blocks rated as one. This was a policy that is now applies across the board, but came from the Far North District Council. They had many instances where two blocks side by side or down the road from each other might be in common ownership or commonly used, and they were being charged the UAGC twice, the Uniform Annual General Charge, and were being treated as two separate blocks. This says that in those instances where the blocks come from the same parent block, they've been partitioned from the same parent block, that they should be treated as one rating unit effectively. And it will be seen. It'll have to be seen to what extent that is the case in the Gisborne district. I think it's fair to say that your rating team, and neither Lee or I or your rating team are quite sure how that will materialise within the Gisborne area. Rating sales of land. This really sort of tips its hat to a sort of heinous a policy that the Crown, that the government had over many years, where it could force the sale of Māori freehold land blocks where the blocks were in significant rates arrears, and it is the cause of it has been the cause of significant angst over the years between hapu iwi whānau in relation to their lands, because of the amount of land that was actually taken as forced sales. This is one small part of this that has just sat on the side and hasn't been dealt with. So number 7 on this slide here really picks up land that was captured in 1967 by changes that came through the Māori Affairs Act at the time, and it puts beyond doubt that that land also, those parcels of land, of which there are a few in the Gisborne district, they cannot have forced sales for them either. And finally, the legislation provides greater direction to the council on providing rates policies for whenua Māori land that promote land development. And so that may be by providing a remission or a postponement policy where you effectively say you'll have a rates holiday for a period as you develop your land from nothing, let's say, into an avocado orchard or into some form of horticultural activity. So what we've in addition to looking at the legislation, we have also looked at some of your sister councils that are in a similar cohort, if you like, to Gisborne District Council. And what I mean by that is they're all councils that we know have been proactive in the past in their rating policies. And they're all councils that have a disproportionately larger amounts of Māori freehold land. So Far North District Council, Whangarei, Taupo District Council, Whakatane, and Apotiki District Councils. And I think the thing to say about that is that you are travelling in good company. These are all councils that have done and responded in a similar way to the way in which you are now. That is, they have or they will institute reviews of their whenua Māori rating policy to pick up the changes from 2021 or reconsider how they respond to the changes in 2021, as well as looking for general improvement. And I think the things that we've identified as a consequence of talking with and reviewing the rates policies of these councils is that they are generally all pulling back on the complexity of Māori freehold land rating policies. So there's a general tendency to streamline policies, to simplify things, to consolidate where they might have had 4 or 5 policies to really boil things down to 1 or 2 policies. And they're able to do that, and so are you, because the legislation now does more of the heavy lifting than it did previously. Previously, you were having to find your way, make particular policies to deal with some of the issues that I've just described earlier. Now the legislation puts many of those things beyond doubt and puts everybody on a firmer footing in terms of understanding where they stand. I'll turn over to Lee in relation to the next 2 slides. Lee.
Yeah, hi everybody. I have been grappling with issues of rating and valuation of Māori land going back over 30 years now. And it's never been an easy topic. And what we've got here are 2 of the issues that really we will discuss in greater detail at the workshop. it says, the legislation says wholly unused Maori land is non-rateable. And then the question comes, well, what constitutes use? You know, if there's a track or a right of way over the land, does that constitute use? Derelict and unused properties, you know, exist out there. Do they constitute a use? Recreational use of the land, horse grazing, wandering stock on the property. All could be seen to be a use of the land, but the legislation gives us a little bit further guidance. If the use is similar to a reserve or a conservation estate, then we have the discretion to sort of shift the use a little bit to reflect that actually this land's being used in a very similar way. Conservation and land doesn't pay rates, and therefore this should be treated in a similar way. So we'll go through these things in greater detail at the workshop, because each of them is in effect really a political judgment. So the legislation is not specific on some of these things, and in particular apiculture, because you know you can have a few beehives on the land, and does that trigger the rateability for a otherwise vacant block? And what we're saying here is that actually, if it's just a few beehives for personal use, for a hobby, no. If it's a commercial use, yes. But it's very, very complex, because the beehives may not be on the land, but the bees could still be visiting the land, and so that wouldn't trigger a use. So we'll go through these things and really tease them out, and so you can see why we're recommending these recommendations. In terms of the as Darren said, a lot more is codified into legislation, so we had to strip back some of your policies, but there were still some things that we think you should do through a remissions policy. And we've divided that in two parts. Unused portion of Maori freehold land. You would have seen above that it was wholly unused Maori freehold land. But if you create separate rating apportionments, there's a leftover bit, and then how do you treat that, because it's not a separate property. And the development of Maori land is partly codified in the Act, but we think you can go a little bit further to enhance the likelihood of development, and we'll take you through those things. Back to you, Darren.
Kia ora. Thanks, Lee. The final issue to draw your attention in advance of the workshop is the issue of uniform annual general charge. The Local Government Rating Act provides all councils with the ability to put in a uniform annual general charge to a particular limit. And it's fair to say, I think, that Gisborne District Council has taken an opportunity to use and apply the uniform annual general charge, increasing the percentage over a number of decades. The issue with the uniform annual general charge is that it's effectively a flat tax, so a regressive tax. It means that if you're applying the UAGC and that UAGC is, say, $200 per annum, you pay that $200 per annum irrespective of whether you're a $5 million property or whether you're a $250,000 property. It's a flat rate. And so that starts to raise real equity issues in relation to the equity principles that you yourselves have as the Gisborne District Council. In your rating policies, equity is one of the considerations in setting policies. And things have got to a point, we're suggesting, that you may want to revisit the extent to which you apply a UAGC. And this is not a matter of just simply removing, just saying, oh, well, we won't apply it or we won't apply as much, because this is a revenue gathering exercise. And if you take money out of the UAGC, you're then going to have to pump up the general rate. But the general rate is not a regressive a rate. It is based on the value of property, and so it's considered to be more equitable form of rating. So this again is a real political area, and again is one of the reasons why we've identified this as one of the areas for a workshop. And I can imagine that you and we will end up spending quite a bit of time on this, because the answers are never clear around the UAGC, and you really do need to bring a principled approach to it to start with. So just to recap, the sort of workshop issues, which I think we're lining up for around about the 24th of May, are around the use definition stuff that Lee has indicated, around the single Māori freehold land remission policy that we're proposing. So moving from 4 policies that you currently have at the moment to potentially moving to 2 policies, and a lot of that is because the legislation now does the heavy lifting. And finally, the issue of the UAGC and equity, and there may be other issues that Pauline and Fiona pull out for that workshop. Kia ora mea, Stoltz. That's us.
Fantastic, thank you for that. And is it a possibility that you can email the slides to us and then it can be distributed?
Yeah, you have those. Yep.
Awesome, thanks a lot. So what I'm going to do next is open the floor, and there will probably be some questions from councillors. But before I do that, I do want to take the opportunity to acknowledge ex-councillor Bill Burdett. He would have been so happy this morning, because this is something he has tirelessly over the years been talking to staff with and bringing those on the ground experiences to our attention. So I'll make sure I'll give him a ring tonight, but I just wanted to acknowledge him because, like Darren said, we have been a leader in lots of these areas and working really hard over the last while. So I just wanted to take the opportunity to also thank Bill for the work he's done in this space. But without further ado, Councillor Wharehinga.
Firstly, I want to echo your comments, Your Worship, in regards to former Councillor Bill Burdett. I read this report and I thought in my head he would be vindicated by some of these recommendations that were coming through. Darren, Lee, thank you very much for the report. Absolutely fantastic. The recommendations that you've provided us are very thought-provoking, very progressive. I'm really looking forward to the opportunity for us to sit in the room with you as councillors on the 24th of May, I think it is, in order for us to workshop how we move forward in regards to these. One thing I'd like to request of you guys when we come to have this workshop is I recognise the kōrero in regards to the UAGC. Are you able to bring some kōrero from your guys' knowledge, your guys' long history in the space of the overlap and the intersect between Māori and rural communities? Because you've identified Māori land, and you've also identified that there's the rural kōrero in regards to UAGC. A lot of our Māori are also rural whānau, so I wanted to know, like, from your guys' experience, the overlap and the intersect in regards to those subsets of people. Are you able to do that?
We can certainly have a conversation about that intersection. The distilling the information on that basis has proven a little bit difficult, but we can certainly. That's a very worthwhile issue to be discussing and considering when you think about the UAGC issue.
Awesome, thank you very much. And I'm happy to move the paper. Great paper.
Councillor Pahuru Hurewai, thank you.
Tina Kurua, Darren and Lee. Massive amount of work gone into this, and as I was reading through it, my heart was singing a lot. So that's great, and just to acknowledge all of the Bill Burdett and others in the past who have fought hard for this. A lot of the questions that I have can wait until the workshop for sort of detailed stuff, and But thank you, because it's given me a lot of food for thought, and I've got a list of questions, but I know that listening to your presentation, they're better discussed at the workshop. And I'm happy to second Councillor Wharehinga. So thank you very much, and looking forward to the workshop on the 24th of May.
Thank you for that, Councillor Thompson, and then Councillor Tibble. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the paper. As it clarifies a lot of things, puts everything into boxes. I particularly like the part on page 231 where the chief executives, any other circumstances the CE considers appropriate. So that just gives you that discretion and human aspect of things, for things that don't fall into boxes.
Thank you for that. Councillor Tibble, thank you.
Kia ora, Darren and Lee, thank you very much for the paper. Excellent, most enjoyable information. I just wanted to, I wondered, and this is in relation to your slide, other council remission policies. I'm not sure what number it is, but it's in relation to this languaging. All councils with the disproportionately high MFL. I wonder, is disproportionately necessary? Because it smacks of deficit theorising the fact that they have Māori freehold land. And perhaps the sentence itself could be more accurate by just taking out disproportionately and not putting a semantic negative indice upon the thought of it. Kia ora.
Okay, look, that's a fair point, and in your circumstances, it's not required at all. But I do reflect on the fact that Gisborne District Council has one single parcel of Māori freehold land, and when you consider many of those South Island councils, your situation is quite stark. But yes, no, fair point.
Thank you.
Councillor Cranston, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, great paper. When we assess our rates, we assess it on the rating value on the valuations that are going around at the time, which are based on sales. Papakainga is really growing strong here, and there's masses of them. And as you said, it'll probably be some sort of proportioning over the land that the Papakainga are on. Papakainga housing most likely won't be sold. So how is the assessment of rates going to happen on the Papakainga properties?
It's probably one for me as the valuer on this team. With Māori freehold land, it's always difficult because valuations are based on sales, but there is some guidance from the Valuer General on how to take our general land sale and convert it to a level of value that would be appropriate for Māori freehold land. So there is some guidance there that valuers do use. But having said that, there are very occasional sales, and when I went to the Māori Law Court and analysed them all for a year, I found that it wasn't actually a completely consistent outcome. And as you would expect, that was a lot to do with the personal circumstances. So your rating valuers will be familiar with the legislation and the Valuer General's guidance, and will be able to come up with a valuation just like they have to value reserves which don't sell.
Thank you.
Councillor Foster, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the paper. Very good reading. We mentioned UAGCs before, and you were saying that our UAGC is high compared to probably a lot of other councils. Would you be able to bring examples of how that UAGC could be spread and the other rating arenas that we're using? With value, could you bring some examples of how other councils have reduced their UAGC and apportioned it accordingly in the other rated environments? Is that a possibility?
Pauline.
We will, any of this would have to be modelled, and we would come back to say what are the options you would be considering if we were reducing that, what is the impacts and how do we do that? So yes, while it is, as Darren said, what is it in principle that you're trying to achieve, and then how do we actually achieve it in practice? All of that will be modelled and the implications coming from those.
Councillor Alder, thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, great report. And, you know, it is a no-brainer. We shouldn't be taxing native land that's saving us. There are going to be some curly ones. One is the apiculture, as you pointed out, because often the income doesn't go to the landowner. There's a separate entity running the bees. So that's going to be a problematic one, I can see. The other one to look ahead is carbon credits and how they are going to fit in as an income, potentially. I've got two questions. One, the write-off of unrecoverable rates, how do we define that to be fair and equitable? And another just out of interest question, was this a BOPLASS report? Thank you.
That's the last one. It's not a BOPLASS report, it is our report on our current policies that we have, and a review of that as the changes in legislations and how do we move forward with it. Now, with that, I can't remember all of the other questions. Was this some? The unrecoverable. Oh, the unrecoverable. So in terms of our policies, anything that is unrecoverable debt is usually under the revenue and financing policy that sets our rates, and it says that anything that is a debt that may be across the districts would be recovered accordingly generally. So this is exactly the same. It would be what it needs to the cost of it. It is a cost that's recognised, and then it is recorded generally across the district.
I think also the legislation is very specifically worded in that it's a discretion of the chief executive. So that removes that sort of, well, it's, there's a 0.01% possibility to be collected, but in the opinion of the chief executive, it won't be. And so I think that's really where the legislation, gives that empowering aspect to it to make a decision and get on with it.
Thank you, Councillor Parata. Thank you.
Kia ora tata. I just really wanted to acknowledge staff and acknowledge the leadership in this space that, when I read the report, I really just thought I can see how much consideration and thought and understanding of what it is to be a Māori landowner and what Māori land not only means to us, but how complicated it can be. So I just wanted to acknowledge our staff and our CE for that mahi. Yeah. But also I was wondering if there's a space either here or might not be here in our policies about how best to advise Māori landowners and especially those that have governance structures over their whenua, trustees, about how to look at whether or not the land is in use, and if it is in use, are they getting the best bang for their buck and therefore able to pay rates? So I was just wondering if there's a space here somewhere where, Māori land that is in productivity or on that cusp of being maybe a little bit doing some things and maybe making some money, how they can look at potentially being able to pay rates. And I don't know if that fits within our policy, but maybe it's something for us to consider.
Free Worship, yes, under the section which is around about 218, it says about council engagement. So yes, part of this will be how do we get the policies, but then how do we translate that and actually making sure that is well understood. So you're right, this is just a step in the journey of how we go through this process.
Well, thank you, Darren, and thank you, Lee. We look forward to catching up with you. Thank you for the huge amount of work you have done alongside our team. I also want to acknowledge Fiona, who has done a lot in this area as well. And Pauline, you and your team, thank you for that. I look forward to us, now that we've got a better understanding, we will be able to better interact at the workshop as well, because we would know what questions to ask and be able to bring some questions from our community as well, because we'll be able to share this information with our community as well. So many thanks for that. I have a mover in councillor Wharehinga, a seconder in councillor Pahuru-Huriwai. All in favour? Contrary, carried. Thank you. We'll see you guys in May. Thank you.
Yep.
Take
Got
care.
it. Thank you.
Okay, cup of tea time. We will come back 10:15. Thank you. 10:15. Okay. Open up page 238. Thank you. We are moving into our reports that we receive every finance and performance meeting, which are our 2 financial reports and treasury report. And then we will move into our activity reports, which I'll break up in 10 sections. So you can relax, you will get time to ask your questions. Page 238, Pauline, anything you want to add? It is quite straightforward. Thank you for the explanatory notes as well. If there's anything you want to add, thank you.
No, I think it's just as at one time, because it's the 28th of February. So not all of the costs, it's only the initial response costs that are in there for that for Cyclone Gabrielle. But I'll take any questions.
Councillor Telfer, thank you.
Yeah, Pauline, just looking at the, I know it's a small figure when it comes to the rest of them running around here, which got millions beside them, but the 320K of unbudgeted woody debris removal, page 238. Can you just tell me, so what money was in the budget for woody debris cleanup, and going forward, aren't we going to have a real look at that? Because that is, look, you know, how are we going to deal with this, and what sort of numbers are we going to have to put around with that? Can you just give us an update on,
We usually, it's under 100K, it's usually about 80K that we say for the beach grooming, and we do that every year. So, and is in terms of that, I believe there's a woody debris workshop tomorrow, which discusses this and the ongoing and the implications, etc., from it. But yes, that's the amount that we have included in the other costs.
I'm happy to move your, I understand the sentiments. The report was very straightforward. Yeah, I'm happy to move the report. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Alder and then Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I don't know if it's the right place to bring it up, but I will anyway. So we've got employee benefits isolated out, and there's lots of other items that are isolated out. Would it be possible to get consultancy fees isolated out as a section?
So this is accounting standards. So we put it, it's required to do those kind of things as a separate rate. So we don't go into the depth of those things, but what you actually have at the end of the financial year will have professional services and those details of those notes that is in the annual report. But in terms of these are basically the categories that we have for the.
Councillor Thompson and then Councillor Pahuru-Huriwai, thank you.
Just on page 248, you may not be the right person for this question, but it says in terms of the drain rise program, it's underspent because of pending design and map work. Just wondering if there's a bit more detail on this design and map work that's holding that up.
You're right. I'm probably the wrong one to be able to answer that. But what I can say that on that drain rise project, there are drains on private property. And so some of that means you have to get more information and have the directly with the private owners, etc., to be able to do the full design work. But if you get further information, comes back from Dave.
I can, through your worship, I can comment just generally in terms of the drain lines program of works has been put on. There's been some delays that we've experienced as a result of the 2 cyclones. So this last quarter, you're not going to see a lot of activity that's happened in that space anyway. A lot of those resources will be redeployed to be addressing the problems that we currently got on the network. But the team will be presenting to council and to the committee and operations tomorrow, which will go through a work program, how we've been effective.
Councillor Pahuru Huriwai.
Thank you, Your Worship. I had a question too about brainwise, but that's been answered. But can you give me an example of what an ETS liability is? The notes are really helpful, but I still don't. Just said provision for emission trading scheme liability on page 246. But what is an example of that, please?
So an example of that is the forestry area that Wainiki. In terms of that schemes, we would be a landowner, and as part of that scheme, when it occurred 2007, you would say that this is the ETS liabilities associated with that. And that's the main one. There would be, when we report it, the annual report, there would be under the group, and under the group, there is further information that says, okay, GHL, they have under the Tawharakara farms and their ETS liabilities associated with their farms, etc.
Councillor Cranston, thank you.
Yeah, thanks. On page 249, it mentions the 1,000-year bridge having a budget of 1.5 million for the, I guess it's this financial year. There's probably stuff going on that we don't see, but we don't see much physically going on down there. Is that likely to be a carry forward budget, or?
I agree. I think that it will be the case. Is what we will be doing now is trying to be working out what will be completed, obviously, and that will be one of them, and what will be transferred over in the next, and assessing where they are at, especially given that most of their works has been diverted or could not be completed during this time. So yeah, that is a bit of an assessment we have to be coming back to, which probably is around about 1st of June for the carryovers.
Yeah. Thank you.
Any more questions or queries? If not, can I get a mover, please? Councillor Robinson, thank you. Seconder, Councillor Alder. There are no more questions. All in favour? Contrary, carried. Thank you for that, Pauline. Councillors, we move to our next report, rates and sundry invoice debt management to February. Thank you, Fiona.
Probably just take it as read.
Yep.
Similar things, but happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Councillor Wharehinga. Any other queries? Seconded by Councillor Thompson. It's quite self-explanatory. Thank you for that report. All in favour? Carried. Thank you for that, Fiona. Okay, councillors, we are moving so much faster than what I thought. We will have to bring GHL forward, Heather, because we will be finished at 11. Yeah, I did, and everyone obliged. I'm very proud of the work that's been done around this table. I'm not complaining. No, but half an hour to go through will be more than enough time. And even if we take an hour, it is still.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that. Just ignore me. Just totally ignore me, and let's carry on and do our work as we set out. I forgot about the public excluded. So, councillors, I'm going to break this report up, and I do want to acknowledge staff on top of everything, pulled together the activity reports, which is great for us to take a look at. Take a look at these 4 times a year or every quarter. So I'm going to take you through to our different directors going to comment on different stuff.
Yes, we shall try. There are a few
Okay.
missing today.
Yes. So I am going to go to our first attachment, which is our environmental services and protection. So councillors, that's page 263 to 270. So we'll cover that off first. So if you have a question, now is your time. If you don't have a question, we move on to our next section. We have 10 sections to cover off. So if there are no clear questions there, we will do 271.
I do have a question just in regards to.
So if you start off
sorry.
with the page number.
Page
so
number
everyone,
268.
thank you.
I just had a question about stats for coast animal stock control and whether it's often brought up by our community up the coast about roaming stock. Are we able to get stats on that and where we're controlling stock? Doesn't help that a lot of fences are down as well.
Yes, through your worship, we can record, we can just provide that separately where they have responded to.
Thanks for hit page 269, liquor licensing.
Thank you.
It's got a target of 65%, which is, you know, one of the lower targets. Is there a reason that the target is set so low? Thank you.
I would have to come back to it, but basically it would be on timeframes and the complexity that you actually have to go through the process of it. And usually what happens, we look at those, set those performance targets throughout the long-term plan process, and it's based on what's achievable, what is actually trying to push you to a good KPI. But I would suggest that that would be the underlying rationale for it. Yeah.
Councillor Telfer and then Cranston, then Robinson. Thank you.
Yeah, just page 268, just around the consents, overall consents. We're looking at 83% process within 20 days. Can I just get a clarification around process? Does that mean that they've been, that doesn't mean that they've finished, they're just in the system? Is that correct?
So through you, your worship, those stats refer to when consents are granted. So finished.
And I do want to acknowledge councillors that were here in the previous term. A massive amount of work has gone and resourcing and staffing to get us to this level. So I do want to acknowledge, Joe, you and your team, everyone involved, that a lot of work has gone into this area and we are seeing it in the stats today. So thank you for that as well. Someone else had their hand up. Cranston, then Robinson. Thank you.
I know we had a backward step. What page range are we into now?
We're just flying blind at this stage to page 280.
Okay.
So we're doing roads,
That's arranged.
footpaths, environmental service and protection.
No, my question was about cycleways and walkways in Tarahira in particular. Totally understandable that it has gone on hold. But my experience with probably the pool and a lot of other things is they kind of went through whole inefficiencies of planning where we got to a stage, it didn't proceed, and then we went backwards, and then so the inefficiency of getting stuff to a stage and then not proceeding. I just want to know that we can keep things in a place at the moment where we don't have to go back further than where we got to, so we don't have the inefficiency of losing the work that we've done on those projects because of the practicality of putting them on hold.
Through your worship, part of the conversation we will have with you, Pauline will facilitate at the main meeting that we put in the diary, is conversation around Taruhiru and the Better Off funding. One of the things that we will be looking at in terms of the recovery planning and thinking about the impact that this had, if we did have a cycleway on the Taruhiru, what would it have resulted in terms of fixes or maintenance? And so just thinking a bit more around whether that's the right thing to do. I think that the council needs to have that conversation and whether it should be prioritised over other things. So in terms of the stop-start planning, I think there's something more fundamental around climate change, adverse weather events, and whether it's looking somewhere else.
The other thing I had was with the Tukamura Bay transfer station, whether the new site has had to have a reassessment after Gabriel. Yeah.
I'm just going to ask people that haven't spoken yet. We'll go there and then we'll come back. Thank you, Councillor Robinson, and then Councillor Foster.
Madam Chair, are we up to solid waste at 290? I thought you mentioned solid waste.
Not yet. We're just to page 280. So we're just wrapping up roads and environmental service. Do you have something in that section, Councillor Foster? Thank you.
The number of bus passengers per annum, we've got a target of 145,000 and the results are 28,175. My first question is does this include school buses, school bus patronage as well, or?
I would have to check. I would say it's not, but yeah.
No, it does not include school. It's not. It's the city buses.
So it does beg the question: how viable is our bus service for the community? You know, we're trying to, the whole nationally, we're trying to push public transport, and our public transport is woeful.
Well, maybe we should ask the question, because I know it's a lifeline for lots of our community, and pakeke, you can see I drank too much coffee this morning, pakeke, who don't have a vehicle or don't want to drive anymore. So I know for a fact that the people that do use our service, it's very precious to them. I think we should flip what you were just saying on its back and say, how do we serve our community better with a public transport system that really work, and then get the patronage it need? But that's an ongoing discussion we will have to have, because I often see the buses, and Councillor Seymour and myself want to support all the buses to see how it goes and how it work. It's a vital service for a part of our community that really rely on that. So going forward, maybe we should ask, is it time to have a refresh and a rethink, and maybe also look at the numbers? Is it are the targets realistic as well?
Yeah,
but I hear what you're saying.
I just wanted to raise the issue. Basically, I'm not criticising it or anything like that. You know, the other thing is that, you know, the bus suppliers, you know, we pay them a certain amount every year. So there's a whole equity thing there as well about what contribution ratepayers should have towards a service that isn't being used as what we should, you know, what it should be, and how can we create a better performance? Yeah.
I hear what you're saying. Thank you for raising that, and that will be an ongoing discussion. Are you now coming back to page? You've just made a U-turn and you decided you do have a question.
Well, flowing on the kōrero just then, what policy covers our bus transport? Because obviously we've got a target set under something of 145,000. When was that last reviewed? I mean, how recent and how achievable is that? And what steps are we actually taking to achieve that, as Madam Chair has just raised? You know, if we set ourselves a goal with no plan, then we're never going to achieve the goal.
So for the chair, and it gives the why it's so much different than before. So we set these every in the long-term plan. So we look at our performance measures. What are they? What do we need to achieve? We'll change those KPIs. But under COVID, the actual buses themselves, the actual numbers that people are using them are significantly down. So we have a chance to review it, etc. I think CE also needs something.
Thank you, Worship. We have the regional public transport plan, and that outlines our objectives and our aims for public transport. So that's done through the Regional Main Transport Committee, and that gets reviewed and coincides with the LTP. So there's been quite a bit of work that's been done in the committee in the past, and I'm aware that NZTA will be doing some more work around that, as well as we look at how we reduce our greenhouse gas emissions, particularly in transport. So that is the basis for that.
Yeah, just to add to that, through you, Your Worship, there is also a review of the public transport network underway at the moment that the Regional Transport Committee is overseeing.
Awesome.
When might some of that mahi come back to us?
So that is being done as part of this see mentioned through the regional land transport plan, regional passenger transport plan review process. So we'll get dates to you as to where to come back to full council as opposed to being through a regional transport committee.
Thank you for that. Okay, are we finished with roading? Do you still have a roading question?
It's up to him.
Yep. Yep. Thank you.
So 280 was on my comments. Yeah, the price per passenger is atrocious, but it is a required need. We need to be going electric with it because the gas guzzling vehicles traveling around with 3 people is just ridiculous. I've had 2 approaches from people saying that there are routes not covered that they would like to see. One is the industrial subdivision for Men's Shed and Smash Palace.
Oh, Colin, you did the Smash Palace request for service. Just face up. Face up,
pass it
Colin.
on. So I think we do need to have a whole look at the whole thing, which could involve looking at new routes.
Yeah, it was reviewed about 3. I think we reviewed every 3 years. The routes.
And now page number 275, we have planned more speed tables or speed humps, whatever you want to call them. These are currently costing us over $100,000 each. Has the council looked at alternatives? You can buy them online practically for very cheap price and install them in place quick as a knife installation. They're operating on state highways, so they're sturdy as. Can council consider looking at alternatives other than expensive concrete structures? Thank you.
I have passed your concerns on to the roading team and our CEO, your recommendations to look into those different ones, and they are. Thank you for that. You're still at 280? Thank you.
Just a two questions actually, one 275 and one 276. Just around those speed bumps, or traffic calming things. I just was wondering what our policy is around, because I look at this and I see almost we're setting a precedent here. We've done them on Stout Street. I'd like to know what the policy was, why they've done the Stout Street. So what's stopping everybody in this town putting up their hand and say, well, you put one on Stout Street, we want one, and what's the policy? I totally get around schools. I totally get around the skate park that's been done. I think that those are something that could be under a policy, but I do really question the Stout Street one, and I wondered that. So that's my first one. The second one was we've had the update on the chip seal that's been done and the resealing right around the district. I've been around the district the last few days having a bit of a look around, and I do question. I was just wondering who makes that decision on where those roads are being sealed, because I question some of the roads that are being sealed at the moment, which are in perfect state, like Lake Road, which is next to got no traffic on it. Quite a few around Tucker Road and etc. I was just wondering who makes that decision. We've got roads that seem like they're in dire straits, like the one out to Pārtatai, which is dangerous. I was just wondering who makes that decision.
Thank you for that. So 2 questions. The first one is about Stout Street, and I know
you've got the history.
Well, I definitely have history with that because we walked that. It is a complex issue in order to secure raised traffic management for a road. It is a long process where all the neighbours everyone needs to, I think you need 85% of residents to sign up to it. Then there are massive work, they petitioned and evidence, then staff start investigating the claims because there were massive speeding issues, and it's still there. People now just speed between the 2 speed humps, but it is still there. So it's a massive process, but Nadine, you might have a little bit more on it.
It is pretty much a public petition, consideration by council, goes into the long-term plan for further approval for the funding. So there's not a policy per se around, so how do we, equitably apply these speed bumps to places? It has been in the past practice around advocacy of those communities, request petitions, as you said, in terms of getting the residents on board and then council making a decision about that. Yeah, I think we did do a scan over quite a while back in the past around where some hotspots might be, but there isn't a policy position on this per se.
Because I also want to assure you that there are lots of people that absolutely do not want speed bumps. So if there's a real issue and you get the whole neighborhood saying, yes, please, this is a real issue for us, usually we know there is a real problem to address, and then our teams start working with that street and they will measure traffic and speed and everything over a long period. So we do get the odd request, but in my office, I often get requests for speed limitation, but once those people start canvassing their neighbours, it's not always a consistent view from the neighborhood. So we do try to keep it as low as possible, but sometimes there is a real need and the community brings that to us. What was your second question?
Oh, just around the chip seal that's being done right around the district at the moment to use up the seal before this chip before winter.
So the CEO will get our roads to get back to you tomorrow. All good. Did I see any other hands? Then I'm going to move us on. So we're going to land, rivers and coastal, 281 to 289. Councillor Gregory, thank you.
Thank you. Just on page 284, which I need to find. I just wanted to double check with relation to the current progress with the stop banks. Somebody who lives out at on the TRI, where this new 1.5 kilometres of stop banks is to be upgraded, asked me to come out and have a look at it, which I did, and he lives there, and he says that there is absolutely no way the water could breach that current stop bank that's there because of just the way it goes, and it would go up the river rather than over the current stop bank. And so it just left me with the question as to why we're lifting that stop bank in that place.
Thank you, through your worship, and the disclaimer in this that I am not a flood control engineer, but what I do know is that where you don't, so if you don't fix in particular areas, so flood control schemes are quite dynamic, and if you don't address a particular area, the energy will flow to hitting somewhere else or flooding another area. So the engineers would have done some modelling around why they need to upgrade that at one point. So now after this event, we've got some more imagery flowing over the whole entire scheme to make sure that its integrity is intact. So if there are any other weaknesses, we'll have to address those first and then carry on with the scheme. But the council, if we do get some funding through central government, we're expecting regional councils to get some additional funding for flood control. We now need to think about whether we accelerate areas before that we had originally planned for. For example, there might be areas up towards Te Karaka that we might want to accelerate further down the scheme. So that work is currently happening to remodel, to look at the data that's coming in and then look at how we might want to change around our progress and timing of the scheme.
I just want to take this moment to acknowledge the mahi that was done in raising the stop banks. Yeah. We as a council decided to accelerate that project. Staff responded and staff did a fantastic job. Contract did a fantastic job, and the evidence was that our flats and all our horticulture industry and the city was safe during Cyclone Gabriel. So I actually want to formally acknowledge that. I think it's amazing that acceleration, achieving that milestone was brilliant.
Thank you for that. Yeah, do you have a question? Are you waving at me, or do you have a question? Right. Yeah.
Thank you, Rohit. Yeah, I'm going to sound like a stuck record, but I've been emailed, text messaged this morning, and the farmers in the floodplain, shouldn't call it a floodplain because it's highly productive land and we need it in the Manatuki area and Patatahi area, where I think arguably we have been the hardest hit on the flats. That area has been annihilated. There is millions of dollars worth of damage. And coming to the expenditure on the Waipoa River, as has been mentioned before, the TRI doesn't have its own rights. It has its no management plan, and it's incorporated into the Waipoa scheme. So this Waipoa allocated money could and should be being spent on the TRI. Just go back to the report commissioned this time last year up the coast for the flood damage there. And in that report, it stated that the waterway must be kept clear, especially of willows. Go back to the report commissioned after the bowler, and the East Coast Catchment Board's objectives in relation to flooding are to mitigate flooding to a realistic level, to reduce the aggregation in riverbeds, and to establish and maintain appropriate flood paths. This is not being done on the TRI. And we really need to get into it and do it. The job that needs to be done is the willows need to go. They're a weed at that level in the river. And we need to have some dispensation to break what are current rules about chopping up the trees into small pieces in the belt of the river so that they can quietly remove themselves to sea. The idea that, which is what they're looking at doing, the idea of dragging every tree out is not going to be possible. We don't have a budget that will cover it, and the time it's going to take, there'll be lots more damage done before this happens. There are massive willows in that tree that have every potential to take.
Okay, I'm just going to, yeah.
Can I just finish this one?
Just finish off, thank you.
Massive trees in that river that have every potential to take out the bridge, State Highway Bridge at Manatuki. Something has to be done quick. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And I just want to say to you that I have, those issues have been raised with me in the last while as well. And I caught up with Mr. Wilson and the team yesterday, and he is reaching out today and just updating some of the farmers there, what's happening and when it is happening. So I'm aware he's doing it today. So just also giving you an update in that regard. Councillor Wharehinga, thank you.
It's just more just a general comment for our councillors. I want to remind us that these are about the group finances, and we're starting to talk about operational stuff. We have operations tomorrow, we have infrastructure tomorrow, environment tomorrow. You know, yes. That's the time to bring up like the work program stuff. Today's meeting is about interrogating the finances and overspends, underspends, etc. I don't want to hamper our discussion, because these are very good points that our whānau are bringing up in regards to specific operational things, but our ability to do anything about them actually sits in different committees. So I did just want to remind us on that in order to help us focus for today's meeting, and also to help hopefully also get those issues in conversation in the meetings tomorrow, where we have some mana and the right staff present to be able to follow through on a lot of these things. Kia ora.
Okay, thank you for that. We are going to slide straight into solid waste. Well, let's not slide into solid waste. Let's just move on to solid waste. 290. Wade into it. 290 to 295. I think what we're going to do is do all the stormwater. We're going to go right to page 322. All the solid waste, wastewater, water supply, urban stormwater, they are all clumped together under our CEO, who is standing in for Mr. Wilson. And any questions that you have that is more of operational issue, tomorrow is your opportunity just to raise that. But in regards to finance and performance, feel free to ask those questions now. Councillor Gregory, thank you.
Thank you. It's just that when it's in front of us in an agenda, it gives an opportunity to ask a question, whereas like tomorrow's meeting has got a set agenda, which we couldn't bring up, the things which we are discussing today. So I find that difficult to accept. And I just want to ask a question with regards to page 320. It is urban stormwater. So it's Q2, and it says there's been no counts of a flood event. Is that not the first section of this year? And personally, I know there was one, but at least one. And it just says no counts of a flood.
That's incorrect. Correct. Thank you. It should have been, because it's up to the 28th of February, so that should have said 2 within that quarter. So thank you. I will check on that's going on.
Thank you for noticing that.
That's all I have. Thank you.
We'll get to that. I'm just going to ask people that haven't spoken yet or just recently to maybe start off. Cranston, Robinson, Wharehinga, Alder.
Yes, probably a curiosity more than anything. Page 317 under capital projects expenditure, 3 significant projects delayed or deferred. And then this sentence had me scratching my head. Taruhira Waru Hazeman Stormwater Project deferred due to Moss development not proceeding. And I do note that Moss has got a capital M, so I just don't know what that sentence means.
I think it's the development contributions project, the upgrades, but I'll double check on that particular one and come back to you what it actually means. Yeah.
Robinson, Wharehinga, Alder.
Thanks, Stoltz. I'm going to go backwards before I go forwards. Just out of curiosity, I noted in passing, page 283 is a reference to river licensing with a capital R and a capital L. What's river licensing? It says river licensing is down 99K.
So river licensing is the bank between the river, and there is land that council own, which is a sliver of corridor.
Yep.
And so that sliver of corridor can have licenses to farmers who want to graze it.
Okay.
So that's basically that.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. Now, my questions on solid waste. I've lost my little dicky. Right. Right. Page 280. Oh, page 283. Oh, page 293. Okay, page 293. Paukahu, we've not met, we've got a big red cross there, off track, it's off track. Peer review to be completed in April 2023. Is that on track, given we've got 11 days left in April? Why is this so off track, 30% current progress?
Actually find out with regards to the overall program and what's going through with it. I would imagine that where it was completed, it stopped in terms of January from then on, and that may have been a delay in that kind of things, but we'd have to actually confirm.
Hard to imagine that 70% of being on track was lost between January and now, unless something major was going to happen, didn't. Next one was 295, which is the reduction in waste to landfill. Just in the little box here, it says target was 285 QT, green tick, and then it's got 99 kilos. Just what's the 99 kilos? Is that what we're saving, or is that what we're aiming for? Is that my ultimate weight? Because I'm almost there.
Sorry, through your worship, in the Q2, that is the current total of solid waste that's gone to landfill, being our target 285. So we're saying you actually won't see whether we're on track or not until the end quarter.
Okay. Next question is, oh, that's my last one. Thank you.
Good. Councillor Wharehinga and then Councillor Alder. Thank you.
Just in Kia ora, thank you. Also, page 293 in regards to Paukahu. I did want to know what the total budget was there in order to be able to get a sense as to what the underspend was. Yeah, because then that would kind of dictate where I'd move to going forward, and also our ability to be able to carry that cost centre forward past the end of our financial year. I'll wait for you to get that info.
I don't have that specifically for that item, but the total cost for the solid waste is not significant as such. For the year to date was 500K, of which there was a provision for land remediation. And I believe this is an actual professional assessment of what we actually need to do for the reinstatement for Pukaho as opposed to physical works. So a little bit of difference. So it's not a huge amount, but I can get the individual budgets, which I'll find out for that particular.
Right, and the budget for this particular piece of work will stay live until are you confident that'll be spent before the end of our financial year?
So some of the things that we would have to take into account, if it can't be completed by the 30th of June, we assess it if they're committed, that needs to occur. We try to make that assessment and we put it into that revising that carryovers. And so that's, we don't lose it. If it hasn't been spent for a particular purpose that it needs to still occur, it would be still available to be able to do so.
Okay, awesome. Thank you very much.
Can I just comment on that too, just in terms of Paukahu? So this will be one of those considerations. It's, yes, we have some remedial funding put aside through the long-term plan, which is Pauline has pointed out is not going to be anywhere near enough to remediate that landfill. But what we will need to do is work out in terms of our liabilities, how we can, because I do not think that we'll be able to get that completed in this financial year, given the sheer work program in front of us and the needs to kind of mobilise all our engineering support in that space. So we will be looking at what are our liabilities that we actually have to do immediately. If this is high up that list, then we will work out how we need to fund or outsource that work to get done in conjunction with the Paukahu Trust. And then we'll also have to come back as part of that conversation tomorrow is about where are we focusing on and some of the issues and how we're going to stagger out, change some timeframes around that, because I do feel there's a piece here for councillors just to really be updated on what had happened in Paukahu. It's just the capacity to be able to get that information to you.
So sorry, supplementary. So you're proposing like a future Paukahu workshop? Is that what I'm?
Tomorrow we'll have the conversation around where everyone is at, particularly in the infrastructure space and their current priorities. As part of the annual plan that you will have a conversation on, you'll see that the recovery or response aspects has hit us quite hard, and so we're reframing and changing the timeframes that we would have otherwise delivered a report. For example, this is not likely to get done this financial year.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Thatcher-Swan.
Councillor Elder, thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. Page 321, third line up from the bottom. And it is an item that was budgeted at 360,000 and it's coming at 390. I believe the design fee of this was 82,000. Can anyone give me a reason for the 30,000 overrun?
Sorry, when you say the top of the page, can you just tell me what you're referring to?
Third line from the bottom. SW Moana Road.
Basically you have renewals budget, and on that renewals budget for this particular one, there may be unders on one, but it's the overall renewal projects, and I would say it's within the overall cost of the renewals. So for that particular line for stormwater, it's well under in their overall renewals budget. So you're looking at an individual items that they may have forecast that this would be added, but it's under the overall renewals budgets allowed for stormwater.
supplementary. Would I be able to ask a finance question tomorrow and ask the same question again?
It will be either Dave or me will be able to answer it. He'll be able to answer it in terms of the technical
Detail.
things, and I'll be able to say in terms of the overall budget, yes.
Thank you.
Okay, let's move on to our next batch, which is the last grouping we have, livable communities. Ms. Frey, welcome to the meeting. Anyone have questions in regards to livable communities? That 323 to 332. Councillor Foster, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. This is about performance. And on 331, the library target of 150 and for the annual target, 150 patrons, and we've got 23,179, which is just way down. And you know, there is an excuse of 5 days being closed during Cyclone Gabriel in February and March, but you know, that's a significant drop in the amount of people that are frequenting our library, which is quite concerning. And there are some issues around the library when you go past it daily. And I have heard that it is kind of intimidating people going into the library. I'm not going to say why or what, I think most people know, but is there a problem? Is there a problem with access to the library, safe access to the library?
I'm quite surprised because I go in the often. I'm never intimidated. Ms. Frey, would you like
why
to?
the numbers are down so much then?
So your question is, why are the library numbers significantly down from the number? Thank you.
Through the chair, so that is for quarter 2. That's a forecast for quarter 2. So they are down for that quarter, but in terms of being so far below the 150,000 forecast, that's actually not as significant as it sounds. So we've still got 3 other quarters there that need to be attributed. Does that make sense?
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So we have had obviously cyclone and impacts as a result of all of the weather events, which is a direct reflection of the numbers that are down for this quarter. But in terms of the overall year, we've still got 3 other quarters.
So when we read this, we kind of, I mean, all we see is what's in front of us. So I'm looking at this thinking, okay, well, the annual expected target is 150. We've got 23,000, but it doesn't say that in that quarter. It doesn't say, you know, that's the quarterly one. So it's a bit, yeah, it's just,
Okay, let's move on to our next session, which is regional leadership and support services. Who is in charge of that? If there are any questions, if not, commercial operations, 348. That's our last section. Councillor Older.
Actually, I wasn't quick enough, but I had a question around on page 343 when it comes to meeting the targets for the agendas getting out to public. I just really ask if we can have our agendas earlier. It is a full. I've had hardly time to breathe. Barely caught my grandson's surfing comp on Saturday, and I've been head down for every day since Friday afternoon. And I'm sure the rest of us are the same.
Unfortunately, I do want to, and I hear what you're saying. I've been up till 4 a.m. last night because I just didn't have time in the week to fit in reading. One thing we do see though with our work schedules or councillor work schedules, there's some lull time, and then suddenly there's something like this week is just intense. And you know, it's not a spread out as it can be, because it's not about us doing the reading, it's about getting the work done, you know, syncing in with work programs to get the work done in council as such. So I'll ask Ms. Con will comment on that shortly, but we did have a discussion at regional sector because mayors were asking, chairs were asking me, how much do your council, what day arrangements do you have with your councillors and how does your council flow? And it was really interesting. One of the few which have really set out days, Wednesdays and Thursdays, where we do some stuff, But I hear what you're saying. Unfortunately, sometimes we have a lull time of a week or two where there are no meetings, and then suddenly there's 2 weeks of real intense work. So I hear your concern. Ms. Con.
Through you, Your Worship, we've had requested and have obliged to have your agendas to you on the Friday before your meeting. The requirement under the Local Government Official Information and Meetings Act is actually 2 working days. So I think we do pretty well, and if we had them any earlier, you would find that our sign-off process would get rushed, and therefore there will be mistakes in agendas and not necessarily the most up-to-date. So I guess that's the balance that you need to throw. I don't think that we've probably organisationally got the capability to deliver any earlier.
So I imagine part of our process is to read the agenda and have time to consult with our community on any issues that we might need to consult on. There is absolutely no time for that. So at some point, or if I can do it now, I'd like to move that we go back to 4 weekly meetings so that the agenda
Point
is
of
smaller.
order. Thank you for making that suggestion. It's not the time and place. And also what we do need to take into account, I do want to reiterate it again, us meeting is to make sure we are agile to allow the work programs of the hundreds of council employees who Nadine is in charge, the work programs that they do on our behalf. It's not us making it convenient for ourselves to have meetings at certain times. It is also to fit in with work programs. And we had 4 weeks meeting cycles. The huge amount of staff time going into preparing something like this takes weeks. I know the CEO barely slept on Thursday and Friday because she had to then sign it off before it can go to us. So I hear what you're saying, but we also need to be mindful. We are the governors. Underneath us, so many different work streams happen in order for this to come our way, to make those high level decisions. We need to be agile to also make sure we make timely decisions that fit in, first of all, with our governance work plans, but then most importantly with Nadine's team and their working schedules. So thank you for that, and we can discuss it in future, but at this stage, it's not the time and place for that. Anyone else want to talk before I go back then to, yes, Councillor Robinson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Page 342, Māori responsiveness. Can someone just give it a little bit more of an explanation about what the stock take process is and the work that is to be expected to be completed in Q3 under the commentary, please?
So through the chair, that is a piece of work to assess all our have cross-council with iwi and to understand the resourcing requirements for them and to align some of the work. Some of the stock take findings has been that we've got MOUs which are non-functional, so we want to make the best use of the MOUs that we have and to provide the resourcing to support what we've got.
Thank you for that. Okay, councillors, is someone brave enough to move this big report that we've just worked through? Councillor Wharehinga, seconded by Councillor Cranston. Are there any more questions? This is your last go. Nothing. All in favour? Contrary? Carried. And Nadine, thank you also to the team for the massive amount of work that went into these agendas. I declare our meeting public, I declare the public meeting closed. Will someone move into public? Seconded by Councillor Pahuru Huriwai. All in favour? Contrary?